Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another story time. I did a story time about my pregnancies a couple of months ago, I think. And when I did that, just in case you don't know and you're new to the channel, I do have two kids. I have a daughter and her name is Nala, and she's 6 years old, and then her little brother, his name is Jaden. He is 5 years old, and they are 9 months apart, which just to keep it short, I got pregnant 5 weeks after having Nala, and I explained all of that along with their birth stories and all of that stuff in my pregnancy video, which I will link down below if you're curious. So in that video, I asked you guys if you would be interested to see a story time on my experience with nursing and ultimately, I don't even want to say it like this, but ultimately my failure to nurse. And a bunch of you said that you did want to see it, so here we go. I'm not super excited to film this video, and I've put it off for a long time, but I feel like it can be helpful because I recently watched someone's nursing video and I saw how much they were struggling and how affected they were by it, and it just took me right back to where I was 6-7 years ago, basically, when I was going through it and the things that I felt and how alone I felt. So basically, okay, I wanted to nurse. Okay, so when I found out I was pregnant, I was 21 years old, and up until that point, I mean, no one had ever told me that I was gonna go through any kind of, you know, anything extra hard basically when it came to pregnancy. As far as everyone was concerned, my body was normal enough and it should have been able to handle pregnancy and nursing and, you know, whatever comes with it. So I did end up going into preterm labor with Nala, and I went into preterm labor around 7 months. Aside from that, everything was basically by the books. I mean, I got the, you know, I remember like getting the emails from Baby Center and getting like carpal tunnel week 23, and I was like, oh my gosh, I actually have carpal tunnel right now. This is horrendous. I can't even like open the door to get out of the bathroom. But I remember everything was basically just by the books. So when I was about 7 months, I think it was like, I don't remember. I was just about 7 months. I came home from work and I was bleeding, and so I went to the hospital. I was hospitalized for a few days, and I was in fact in labor. They were able to stop it, and they gave me some drugs to do so. So I continued taking those drugs for a couple of weeks, and they were just really strong, and I was afraid of what they were gonna do. So they also gave the baby steroids. So once they decided that she was healthy enough, then I went ahead and ended up delivering her at 8 months. And I did deliver her vaginally. I did not deliver her naturally, which I go into all of that in that pregnancy story like I mentioned, but I did end up having 3 separate epidurals. And then finally, boop, my little baby is born. After 24 hours in labor, she just decided to grace me with her presence, and my little Nala was born. So I had always intended to nurse. So as soon as Nala was born, they put her up to my breast and she immediately latched on. It wasn't, you know, it was a struggle for like a few seconds, but she did latch on right away and she got to sucking basically. And the whole time that I was at the hospital, I nursed her. So I was there for a couple of days. We did stay longer because her the labor was so long that they wanted to keep us extra time just in case, basically. So she was born at a healthy weight. Everyone gets on me because I don't remember my kids' exact weights, but like I don't remember anything. I have a memory problem, and also who cares? Like they were fine. They were like 7 pounds, 7 some change, right? So she was born, and everything was fine. So I went home, I think after 3 days, and I went home and, you know, continued trying to nurse her. And it was within a day of being home that I realized we were kind of struggling. And while I had been at the doctor's office, or rather while I was in the hospital, I had spoken to the lactation consultants, and you know, they told me what to do, what not to do, yada yada yada. And I had already looked up so much information before having kids because I was, you know, I was preparing to nurse, and that's what I wanted to do. So, you know, I had gone and gotten the cream and stuff for my nipples because I heard they were gonna hurt. I had my pads and stuff. I had been taking my vitamins and doing whatever else I needed to do. And so when I got home, I made sure to continue what I was supposed to be doing. But I realized very quickly that Nala and I were struggling. And she would go and she would latch on. It was never a problem for her to latch on. But she was so unsatisfied constantly, right? And so she was always crying and crying and crying. And it was within a couple of days of being home that we had to go back to the doctor, and they noticed that she had dropped, I wanted to say she dropped she dropped like almost a pound basically. And so they were obviously concerned, and they were asking, you know, how often are you feeding her? And at the time I was trying to feed her whenever she cried, which was constantly. So it was every couple of hours, every 2 hours or so, you know, she was at my breast and she was trying, and we would struggle so much. I mean, she would latch on and it just seemed like she was sucking and sucking and sucking and never swallowing. And so you know, I tried all the different positions that I could think of, and it just wasn't working for us. So they said, you're gonna need to put her on formula. And I was like, I don't wanna do that. And you know, I was obviously like, I was so emotional and I was in tears, and I felt like I was failing because I wasn't able to give her what she needed, and I didn't understand what was going on and why. I know I'm gonna get emotional in this video, so like, let's just get that out of the way. That's gonna happen. So I just knew that like she was trying and I was trying, and it didn't seem like there was any reason why it shouldn't be working. So everyone's, you know, suggesting all of these things. You need to eat this kind of food, you need to drink this much of this, and you need to do all that. You need to take 1,000,000 fenugreek capsules every day, and I was smelling like maple syrup out of every single pore, and I was doing it, and I was pumping because when I had gone back to the doctor and he said, you know, this is a problem, and he made me feel like shit. I had really bad insurance at the time for her. We had it through the state, and he made me feel like shit, and he was an awful doctor, and I hate him, and still to this day he can just go to hell. So I shouldn't be like that. I really shouldn't. So like, okay, he just was not kind to me at the time. So we ended up getting a pump, and so she would try, you know, she would try. I would always go to my daughter first, basically. I would let her try on both of my breasts first, and she was just not able to get it. But we kind of, we just kept trying. We didn't go to formula right away, even when they had suggested it. They weren't like pushing it like, your kid's gonna die if you don't give them formula, but they were basically saying, it's obviously not working, you need to give her formula. But I decided not to. So then when Nala wasn't trying, when I wasn't trying to feed Nala, I would have the breast pump. And so I think I was at a point where I was trying to pump basically 12 times a day, because within a couple of days, we realized that it was not gonna stop. Nala would wake up. During the day, it was a little bit easier. It was a little bit easier to satisfy her some other way. But at night, when she would wake up out of like a sleep, and then try to latch on, I mean, I just remember sitting there like on my bed, just like this, sitting just like this, and having my daughter in my hands, and her just be screaming, just screaming, screaming, screaming. And she was so frustrated because she was trying, and she was obviously very hungry, and she was trying to latch, and she would, but nothing would come out. And like, I would squeeze my boobs sometimes, and I would just squeeze the hell out of it, and like 1 or 2 drops would come out, right? And this is like a week later, and I was like, I feel like I should have a little bit more than that at this point. But she would try and try and try and try and try and try and try, and she might be able to go for like 2 minutes, you know, before she started screaming again. But I just remember sitting there countless nights, just having my daughter screaming in my arms, and then me just crying, just like not able to do anything for her. And it was after a couple of those nights that I was like, you know what? We have to get formula. Like, we have to get formula. We can't. She continued to lose weight, and it... So after a couple of nights of that struggle, we decided to go back to the doctor again, and she had lost more weight, and she was also no longer having, like, she wasn't having a bowel movement. She went a couple of weeks actually without having a bowel movement, and I want to say she actually went close to like somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks, and she was losing weight somehow. She was still peeing, not that much, but she was still peeing, and so it got to the point where it was dangerous to not supplement. So we ended up trying to supplement with formula, and we did it, you know, really low amounts at first. I can't remember exactly how much, but it was just, you know, an ounce or 2, and then, you know, first I would try to feed her on my boob, and then when she got frustrated enough and we realized that she, you know, wasn't getting anything there, then we would give her the bottle, and she would suck these bottles down, you guys. Like, she was so hungry, and I felt so bad, but I would still continue trying to pump. And I think in the 2 separate instances, which I'll tell you about the second one in a second, in those instances, of all the times that I pumped, the most that I ever got in an entire day was about 1 ounce total. So I thought, maybe there's a problem, right? Like, I started to feel, obviously I felt horrific. I felt like a shitty mom. I didn't like giving my kid formula in public. I didn't want to go anywhere. So at the point where we started giving her formula, I mean, my relationship was crap. And being a new mom proved to be more difficult than I could have anticipated. And it was so hard. It was so hard. But along with the formula, I still continued to try to nurse her. You know, I just want to explain really quickly here, especially to those of you that don't have kids, right? Or to the men, okay? The reason I'm so emotional is because we live in a culture where you are pushed to nurse your child, right? Breast is best, right? You live in a place where you feel like we're taught to feel ashamed if we don't nurse our children. And there are a lot of different reasons why women can't nurse their kids or choose not to do so. So I wanted so badly to nurse my children. And so when it was impossible, it felt impossible to do it. Like, I felt like such a failure. And that, teamed with the fact that my daughter was inevitably having problems, right? She was having problems because she wasn't eating and she was losing weight, and like I said, she wasn't having any bowel movements or anything. And then my relationship on top of that was utter crap, okay? Like, all this put together made it so difficult right after having my daughter. Like, I was so sad. I was so sad all the time. I didn't want to see people. I didn't want to do anything. It was just so difficult. I felt like there was no way to make my daughter happy. There was no way to, I felt like I was pouring these bottles full of fucking poison, okay? I felt like I was giving her the worst thing for her. And I felt horrific because of it, okay? So it was all these things teamed together that really caused it to be such a traumatic experience for me. Now, I continued to try to nurse her. I continued to try to nurse Nala. And I haven't even mentioned the pain, okay? I know that it can be very painful to nurse a child because, you know, you're suddenly having someone suck on your nipples like all the freaking time, and it hurts a lot until your nipples can kind of toughen up a bit and they become used to it. Well, because nothing was coming out of mine, Nala was sucking like so hard. I mean, my nipples were just completely scabbed over. They would bleed every single time that she went to nurse. Both of them, they would just bleed, and it was like excruciating. I remember having to like put a towel or a blanket or something in my mouth and bite down on it while I allowed her to suck, because it was so painful. And I was using all these different creams and everything else, and it was awful. That went on for about a month, but I didn't want to stop because of the pain. Like, the pain was not going to be what kept me from letting my daughter try to nurse, but it was just the fact that nothing was coming out. So for those first couple of days, you know, I did have the colostrum, I believe that's what it's called. So that comes out in those first few days. And she was able to get that. And so I at least felt a little bit of reassurance that, you know, at least I was able to provide my daughter that. So within the month, I eventually stopped pumping because it was obvious that nothing was going to change, and nothing was going to come out, and it wasn't increasing. It was not increasing at all. So something that's interesting is that while I was pregnant, I know my makeup is going to be like insane. While I was pregnant, the entire time that I was pregnant, my breasts never changed at all. The size never changed at all. They did not get any bigger, they didn't get any smaller, nothing. They did not change at all. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Well, I think, you know, I hear, obviously, once you get milk, like your breasts are gonna become bigger, they're gonna become sort of, you know, engorged, like they're gonna change. Well, after I had Nala, my breasts still did not change at all. And I waited for my supply to come in, and it just never came, right? So I thought that that was really weird, and I had mentioned it to the doctor, and they were like, well, you know, I guess you just have to continue to formula feed her. So I did. So as you guys know, I ended up becoming pregnant 5 weeks later. I did wait until my checkup, and she gave us the okay to have sex. We had sex that one time. It was excruciating because of how much I had torn with Nala, but he did end up finishing, and that is how I ended up being pregnant with our second child. So with Jaden, you know, I had just gotten over, I'm not even sure that I was over it, but I had just gotten beyond the point of, you know, giving Nala formula and everything, right? Like, it had been like a month since we had completely gone off of the breast, and then I find out that I'm pregnant with my son. And so I'm like, okay, not gonna do that again, right? This time, we're gonna get it right. So I did everything like I was supposed to do. I was trying to eat whatever foods that were supposed to help with the milk production or whatever, like whatever I could do while I was pregnant, within our means, basically, because we didn't have a lot of money, especially at that point. The second baby was definitely a surprise. And I thought, you know, that now I know you're a lot more fertile after having kids. I didn't know that after having my first, because I didn't have the greatest gynecologist at the time. Now I have an amazing one. She's also my OB, so she's actually the one who delivered Nala, even though she was my OB when I was pregnant with Jaden, but she did not deliver Jaden. She was out of town. But she was definitely a lot more helpful. But I thought that, you know, breastfeeding, even though I guess I wasn't really doing it well, I thought that that was supposed to kind of be like a natural birth control. That's basically what my mom did, so that none of us ended up like right on top of each other, but there are 6 of us born in 8 years. So clearly breastfeeding would help kind of stave off the pregnancy for a while there, and then she would get pregnant again. And so she and my father had 6 kids together, right? So we are a fertile group of ladies in this family. So I got pregnant with him. And then I wanted so badly, once again, I wanted so badly to have a natural birth, a drug-free birth, right? And then I wanted to nurse. I didn't end up doing the first one. Again, I ended up having to get multiple epidurals because of the way that the Pitocin had sped up had sped everything up, and then my body kind of shuts down at that point, and then it does not progress anymore. But Jaden was born much quicker than Nala was, and he was also born early. He was born about a month early. And again, because I was able to tell them of all the struggles that I had with Nala, they, the lactation, consultants, or specialists, I don't know what to call them, they were coming in the room, you know, quite a bit right after Jaden was born. And again, immediately he took to my breast and he did his best, and he was able to eat in those first 2 days, because this time we only stayed there for 2 days. But they sent me home with the best, highest quality hospital pump or whatever it was. And that's when they were like, okay, you need to take 15 fenugreek capsules. I'm telling you, every pore smelled like maple syrup. My sweat smelled like maple syrup. My pee smelled like maple syrup. I reeked of maple syrup, and it was disgusting, because I'm pretty sure fenugreek is the fake thing. It's in the fake maple syrup. That's why it smells like that. It was disgusting, and to this day, that scent just brings back horrific memories. But they told me that, and it was a bunch of other stuff that they had me taking. I remember my counter at my apartment at the time was just full of different supplements, and so I was taking everything religiously, dude. I had the alarms on my phone. I was like, I'm taking this, I'm taking this, I'm doing this, I'm taking whatever they say I need to take. I'm pumping like crazy, and it didn't matter. The same exact thing happened. My son started losing weight very quickly. He was also born at about 7 pounds. He started losing weight right away, and that is normal to an extent. But they do get concerned if they start losing over a certain, over a certain amount, basically over a certain percentage of what they were born at. So he immediately lost weight. He also stopped he wasn't peeing and he wasn't pooping the way that he should have been. And he did the exact same struggle that Nala did, except this time it was just so much worse, because my daughter was only 9 months old when Jaden was born. So I had my 9-month-old waking up and screaming, and we had gotten to the point of giving Nala the bottle, right? And it had formula and everything. And then I would still pick up Jaden and try to put him on my breast. And we went through the same struggles. I sat there, I cried, he cried, we screamed, we were just sad. It was super painful once again. And I was pumping like crazy, and I'm telling you guys, there was one day I remember pumping 14 different times. I felt like I was a prisoner in my home. I had a 9-month-old, I had a newborn, and then I had a breast pump on me all the time. We lived in this really tiny apartment, and their dad was always, he was gone. He was at work and stuff, and so I would be alone with them just morning, noon, and night, and it was an awful time in my life, and I really hated it. But the same thing happened, and so there was that one day that, like, I remember this one specific day. I pumped and I pumped and I pumped and I pumped and I pumped. And I felt like I spent the entire day with that breast pump on me. And the most in total that I had gotten was 1 ounce. 1 ounce of milk. And my son was already like weeks old at this point. And I had gotten 1 ounce. Like, so of course, it was the same deal. They wanted me to put him on formula. We said no at first. And then when we realized that nothing was happening with me, we went back and we said, okay, like, we're gonna supplement a little bit with it. And then eventually it turned into all formula, because Jaden was like insatiable. That kid just was like, he wanted so much to eat. And he ended up being like a big tubby baby. For a while there, he was a huge kid with formula. But then eventually, like, he's definitely thinned out. And so then, okay, so now years later, my mom went to nursing school, right? And they were studying something. And I remember she came and she told me about this condition. And she was like, you know, I think this is what you had. Okay, and I was like, you know, what I had, like, because no one ever told me. I told everyone about my problems. I was constantly talking to the lactation ladies, and I was, you know, doing what I could to get advice and take anyone's advice. You know, I was on the internet, I was doing whatever I could do, whatever information I could find. I was trying everything. And no one ever mentioned that, hey, Sarah, maybe you're just not able to do it. I was always made to feel like you're not doing it right, or you're not trying hard enough, or you're not, you know, I was made to feel like I was the problem. Like, my will to do it was the problem, not my actual body. So my mom mentions this thing, right? And I'm like, well, that's interesting. So it's called hypoplasia. And I did a ton of research on it after the fact and actually talked to my doctor about it. And some of the signs, right? Some of the signs that you might have hypoplasia are that your breasts are widely spaced apart. They're 1.5 inches apart. My breasts are very far apart, okay? That's why I always talk about my boobs being little and stuff, is because my boobs are far apart and they are a little bit smaller, as, you know, in regards to the rest of my body. The rest of my body is obviously bigger. I'm plus size. And so my boobs are really far apart, and they are very asymmetrical, which is common. It's common for them to be asymmetrical. One is like significantly bigger than the other one. And then this one always caught me up. It says presence of stretch marks on the breast in absence of breast growth, either during puberty or in pregnancy. I have a massive amount of stretch marks that come down my boobs that are so little. And like, it doesn't make sense that I even have stretch marks, because my boobs are so, like, I know they look bigger, but it's because I have a ridiculously double padded push-up bra on right now. But they're not. I mean, I can easily cup my boob in the palm of my hand, just like this. I can cup my boob right there. And then it says a tubular breast shape or an empty sac appearance, which is also what I have. And then it says one of these does not apply to me. Disproportionately large or bulbous areola. I don't really have that. And then the absence of breast changes in pregnancy, postpartum, or both. And I absolutely had that, because I never had any kind of breast change at all. And so after talking to my doctor and everything, it seemed like that is the problem. I do have hypoplasia, and so like, I wish I had heard of it before. I wish I had known to maybe expect certain things. Like, maybe mentally that would have helped. Not that I wouldn't have tried, because I think I still would have tried. And if I got pregnant today and I had another baby, I cannot tell you that I wouldn't try, because I feel like I would just try, and I would put myself through it again, because it still feels like I still feel guilty. I still feel guilty that I formula fed the kids. Even though Nala and Jaden, they were born very close together. Jaden is a more sickly child. He just had a tonsillectomy, and he had his adenoids removed, and he had tubes put in his ears just like a week or two ago. He's definitely a more sickly child, but Nala is not. She's perfectly fine. She has a perfectly fine immune system. Jaden has been sickly since he was born. He was in and out of the hospital. He has asthma. He has his, what is it called? The machine that helps him breathe. Why can't I think of it right now? I can't remember what it's called. We put the mask on him. Why can't I remember what it's called? I'm all over the place. But, so, you know, Nala, who basically had the same experience as Jaden, you know, Nala's relatively healthy. There's nothing wrong with her. She's not at the doctor an abnormal amount of times, while Jaden absolutely is. And they essentially had the same experience with nursing, and they both got the same type of formula. And you know, I did quickly find out the formula is way more convenient as far as I'm concerned than breastfeeding, because then it, you know, their dad could help and stuff. And especially with 2 kids, it was just so much more convenient to have, because they were both on the bottle at the same time. It was way more convenient. It was also way more expensive. So, you know, there are definitely pros and cons to it. And as far as their growth goes now, like I said, Jaden is 5 going on 6, and he is in the 99th percentile for his height and his weight. He is a very healthy child in terms of, you know, his body and how he's growing and everything. And so is Nala. She's also in the, she's in like the 95th percentile for height and maybe like the 90th for weight. She has shot up and become a little string bean this last year. But as far as their growth goes, everything is fine. Nala is an incredibly bright little girl. She's in kindergarten and she's reading at a 3rd grade level. She is a very, very bright young girl. And then Jaden's a little bit, he's on the young end because he just barely made the cutoff, so they're both actually in kindergarten together. But he is on the younger end, so he is on track with where he should be as a kindergartner. My point there is that they both had basically the same experience with me. And they both had the breast for those couple of weeks that I could try. They both got the colostrum, which was great. And then they were both on the same type of formula. They both had the same amounts of formula. They have both basically been raised in the exact same way because I'm a single mom, and so I don't take one and, you know, do something for one and not do it for the other. I basically treat them, you know, now I treat them a little bit differently because they're different kids and they need different things. They show and receive love in different ways and stuff. But that's my story. I just wanted to show you guys and talk about something that maybe some of you guys had never heard of before. But even if you are choosing to formula feed, you're making that decision even though you have, you know, a large milk supply or whatever else. Like, don't let people make you feel bad about that. We make the decisions that we do based on what we need for our own lives. So I just wanted to share my story and some of the struggles that I went through with nursing. And like I said, if I ever had another kid, I think I would do it all over again. As hard as it is and as emotional as it was, I mean, I would do my best to at least try, even though I know that I just don't get a milk supply. Like, my speaker turned off. I would do my best. I would do my best to try, at least for a few weeks, and I would go through that, and hopefully I would have a supportive partner with me. I don't plan on having a child without having a husband this time around. Not that I don't want to put anything on the father of my kids or anything. He helped how he, you know, in whatever way he could, I guess. We were young, we were dumb, we were inexperienced, we were new parents. It was tough. It was just really hard. And now I'm a lot older, and I think I would still give it a go. But I would I would love to know if any of you guys have dealt with anything similar, or if any of you have hypoplasia, or maybe you've never heard of it, but maybe some of those symptoms are something that are, you know, maybe you recognize some of them and it's like, oh, okay, maybe that's my problem. I definitely would have loved to know about that beforehand, just to, I think mentally it would have helped me, because I went into it was dark. I went into some very dark places after having my kids, and I'm glad to not be there, and I hope to never be there again. But yeah, that's all that I have. I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. I hope I didn't cry too much. Like, I cried a lot off camera, so I'm hoping I'm able to edit most of it out. But I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. Give me a thumbs up if you want to see anything else. I guess parenting stuff, like, I don't have a problem talking about parenting things. It's just that people get really judgmental online, and I just don't feel like it's a part of my life that needs to be judged. Like, I don't need it. I don't need people to be dicks to me online about stuff that has to do with, you know, things that I've gone through with my kids and my pregnancies and everything else. Especially because it's in the past and rude comments don't exactly help anything. But I'm happy to share some more of my struggles and stuff with parenting, and I guess if there's anything particular you guys would like to hear about or see or get a story time about, I would be more than happy to. I don't know if I'd be more than happy, but I would be willing to share. So again, give me a thumbs up if you guys enjoyed the video and you want to see anything else like this, and you can share your stories down below. I'm sure someone will relate, and yeah, that's all I have. So I hope that you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!